What's up, people?
There we go. Hey guys, welcome to episode, I believe it's 13 now, of League One Fun. We just want to shout out real quick our sponsor, Scarves. Be sure to check out scarves.com for all your scarving needs for MLS, USL, US soccer. Be sure to check them out. You have some scarves. And we just want to thank real quick Beautiful Game Network for hosting us. But with that out of the way, we have a whole gang here tonight to recap week 2 and some big news announced today. Ira, how's it going?
It's going great, Mark. I spent a lot of time taking copious amounts of notes. So, I can't wait to get into these games with you guys.
Well, that's good because I took absolutely no notes watching. So, I'm glad we average out. We also have Jason. Jason, how's it going?
Better now that Chattanooga pollen was trying to bring your boy down. I don't know how. Listen, like I deal with pollen every year, and I thought I was used to it, getting the worst of the worst in Georgia. Nothing on Chattanooga. I was struggling, but we'll talk about that later. But shout out to Chattanooga, great city. I definitely have fun and definitely be going back.
For sure. And last but not least, Chris, how's it going?
Doing well. Just hoping to not get a red card on this week's podcast.
Actually, I don't like that. I don't like that tone. Let's start Chris with a yellow right now. Set the standard, set the tone from the beginning.
No warning at all. All right, guys. So before we recap the games, as I mentioned, some big news. We have our first matchups for USL Open Cup for these League One teams. They were announced this afternoon, depending on where you were. I'll run down the matchups real quick, and then we can discuss them. First, we have Chattanooga Red Wolves. I believe they're traveling to South Georgia Tormenta 2, SL League 2. We have Lansing Ignite will host Ann Arbor AFC of NPSL. Forward Madison will play the Milwaukee Barbarians, who are the Adult Cup champions. I believe I got that right. South Georgia Tormenta 1, not the 2 team, the first team. We'll play Greenville Triumph in the only League One versus League One matchup.
Don't be scared. That's right.
And then last but not least, Richmond Kickers will play Virginia United. So guys, first thoughts?
I think one of the things we have to realize is, a lot of these teams in the NPSL and in USL League 2, they haven't even been rostered yet because nearly everyone on those rosters are college kids, right? So these college kids, they're not out of school yet. So these games happen like right at the very beginning of their season. Most of them might not even have played a competitive match before these games. So it's like impossible to know. So we complain about CCL, but if you're like, South Georgia Tormenta 2, they might have 3 players now or 4 players that they know are going to be on the team. So it'll be really an uphill battle for them to play, a Chattanooga side that's, going to have 6 or 7 games under their belt by then.
It's obvious to me that U.S. Soccer is colluding with USL League One to make Tormenta and Greenville the premier rivalry of the league. We're going to be playing 5 times now this year. It's ridiculous.
So, Chris, would you have preferred Tormenta 2?
I mean, yes. I mean, here's the deal. Like, I get it. It's going to be a more premier matchup. I think you're going to get more eyes on it. Probably going to be easier to sell those tickets. But at the same time, like there is an advantage to having a first round game against a team that, like you say, doesn't know who their roster is going to be at this point. And yet, these two teams these are the only 2 pro teams playing each other in the first round. So it's not just Greenville. I mean, Tormenta's got to feel the same way. It's disadvantageous to each of those teams to be playing each other.
I don't know, if you're scared, go to church. I think if this is the first ever U.S. Open Cup game and you get to play who you hope out and supposedly will be your rival, I'd be excited for that. Obviously, it's a lot harder than everyone else in that round. But yeah, like that gives you the idea to stick your chest out. And so if you do go on a run, be like, yeah, we didn't have to beat up on a UPSL team or anything like that. We just got to go straight into it.
Give me the UPSL teams. Give me all of them, every round, all the way to the end.
But I think we all know the team within USL League One that should be most kind of not fearful, but has the most on the line, right? What do you guys think? Because I know the name.
I think I know the name you're thinking of.
You can't lose to Tormenta or Tumenta Red Wolves. You can't do it. You can't be the first USL League One team to lose to a USL League Two team. You can't do it. That's the one I'm excited for. And also Red Wolves being the most veteran team in the league, you can't sit there and lose to a team, like you said, that probably still hasn't even rostered yet, right? Like a group of college kids or a group of academy kids who have yet to play. So,
but if that does happen, then don't you think then that USL Cup between the Championship, League One, League Two is coming sooner than later? If that happens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, like then that shows. But also, this is supposed to be like when you look at when you look at Red Wolves roster, that is a win it now roster. That's not this is our first year, let's try some things out, or we're gonna develop some kids. Nah, we're gonna come in this league and we're gonna do damage. So you can't do that. It's too much pressure. I don't think they will, but I think that they'll probably win handedly, but you can't do it. Chris, I know you're a little hesitant about your team and you don't think it's fair. They're the ones who should really be like, all right, guys, like if I need to rest a player in League One regular season before this US Open Cup game, guess what? That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not. I think
that probably is the advantage for Greenville and Tormenta playing each other, is that whichever team loses, you don't have the embarrassment of potentially losing to a team that you don't have any business losing to. Like whichever team comes out of that without winning, yeah, it's a bummer. You go out in the first round of your first ever Open Cup, but at the same time, at least you go out to a team that's on your level. If you're one of these other teams and you get beat, hold the door, because it's gonna be a rough go for you that week.
Even if it goes to extra time too, right? Like even if it's like a 1-1 or something like that, because one team gets a lucky goal, it winds up being a little bit embarrassing. Like if Ignite or Forward Madison end up going 120 minutes, and that's a problem too for the league, because they all have games on the weekend after this round, or most of them do. I haven't checked the entire schedule, but so how much roster rotation can you really do? Because clearly you want to at least advance in the US Open Cup first round. You don't want to be embarrassed by losing to a lower division team. So that means on the weekend, you'll probably wind up rotating not most of your roster, but a number of players.
Yeah,
unless you're Greenville and you don't have any subs, because you've only got 18 people on the roster and 3 goalies.
So mentioning the schedule, I will say I have the League One schedule pulled up. I don't know if Tormenta meant this or not, but Tormenta plays a League One game on April 27th and does not have another game until May 12th. So the game.
What a way to schedule.
These first round games are on the 7th and 8th, and Tormenta has a whole week off before that matchup with Greenville. So
I wonder if that was part of their deal about having to play 3 games in the first 8 days of the league, though, right? Maybe it's just like we come out the gates, but then we get a break for US Open Cup.
I'm sure it is, because teams like a different division, but in the championship, Phoenix Rising has their buys based on international FIFA breaks. So I'm sure teams take and give to be able to get those favorable spots.
But let's not diminish, the teams of Bavarians, and because that's UPSL champion, right? So this is not just a standard middle table UPSL team or MPSL team. These are good teams and from good systems. Ann Arbor has a great system, and also one of the advantages that these teams have is there's not a lot of tape that's just accessibly around for Ford and Lansing to kind of look after, right? So if they can just for one game kind of strategize and have a game plan to try to catch a team off guard, or just try to catch a team not really prepared for them, and they can get an early goal and then park the bus or do whatever they need to do possession-wise to keep the game going and try to get a win. That's something that we've seen in US Open Cup before, right? Like we've seen bar teams make it to almost the quarterfinals. So this is not in the bag for all USL League One teams. This is something that that's the magic of the cup, as they say. This is why we play.
So I posed this question in the chat, but I want to get your guys' response real quick. If you had to pick one team that will lose in this first round, who would you go with? Because odds are most of them will win. So you got to pick the upset.
All right, y'all. I guess I'm going first.
Are we saying outside of the Greenville Tormenta game?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean it's got to. I mean one of them probably has to lose, right?
Yeah, I mean I feel like that's the obvious answer, but I think outside of that, you know what? Let's throw a little spice on the fire. Let's say Lansing. Let's say Lansing gets beat there by Ann Arbor.
Ira, what do you got?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Forward Madison, and not that I know any of these teams, and obviously, like I said, they're not rostered yet, but at least the amateur champions, they've been together longer, right? They're a annually rostered team as opposed to the NPSL or USL League Two teams that are mostly college players and have huge roster turnover year to year.
Yeah, that was going to be mine too, for that exact reason, and also, even though style is probably going to change, we've only seen Forward with one game. They're very possession based, and I feel like in tournaments, if you have counter-attacking teams play possession-based teams, that's how the Dynamo did so well last year in Open Cup. That's how they did well this year in CONCACAF Champions League, even playing, in Mexico, playing in Guatemala. They weren't worried about possession. They got their chances, they went on the counter, and they scored, and that's all it takes sometimes in elimination tournaments. So that'd be the thing that I'd be worried about for possession teams. And when we watch Forward with Chattanooga, which we'll talk about a little later, they were very possession oriented and wanted to keep the ball. So that's something to where even if you're giving the team 30% of the ball, that doesn't necessarily prove that you're going to have the advantage. It just depends on if you're finishing your chances or if the other team's countering well.
Someone in the YouTube chat said that they're worried about the kickers Open Cup odds. So is it? I'm not sure why. But
yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Like I said, it's any counter any day for any team. But I think Richmond has too much experience, and those guys have played in those types of games to fault. Yeah, last year was the slip up year, but I think that this year, because of that, and this year because it's a new team and they're so based around possession and cohesiveness, that I think they'll be okay. I think it would take a lot. If they're able to come back from that Lansing press and they're able to deal with that kind of attack, then they should be fine against a team from a Spanish amateur league. I believe that's where they're from. So.
All right. And like I said, these games happen May 7th and 8th, so plenty of time to talk about them, to mull over them. But let's get into some recaps, guys. First up, this game was happening while we recorded last week, so we had to keep it spoiler-free. But in the end, South Georgia Tormenta 3, SC Tucson 1. The goals coming all in the second half. We had Devin Vega for SC Tucson in the 55th, Lucas Coutinho for Tormenta in the 57th, Alex Morel in the 58th, a minute later for Tormenta, and Nicoletto capped it off in the 74th. Guys, your thoughts on the game?
We got to hear from Jason on this, because he was staying spoiler free last week during the show.
And I'm glad I did. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I wish I had music to play, because we are officially in the Connor Antley appreciation hour. What a game. What a start. You debut, you come in as a defender, and you are 3 assists of the 3 goals. He played it out of his mind. He showed exactly why Tormenta has a scary defense, and how no matter what your game plan is against them, they're able to buckle down and eliminate everything in the middle. And it's not like he just had the offensive power, right? Defensively, in the 2 games he played last week, 5 tackles, 5 clearances, 6 interceptions, and 16 duels won, and only lost 7. And that's important, because that's Tormenta. That's where they're winning the ball, is in those duels, those 50-50 in the middle. And what Tormenta does really well, and you saw this against Tucson, and you saw it this past weekend against Richmond, which we'll talk about, is their offensive guys track back. extremely well and go after the ball and win in the defense, right? And they win the ball back. So Tormenta, even if they're not possessing, they do enough to where when you start to get into your groove, they send guys back to disrupt that and throw off everything, which is what I think, Tucson had problems with. They can never really get into a groove. Tormenta would come and disrupt it and then play the sides really well. And yeah, I think that was probably the best performance in a half that we've seen so far this year of any team.
I think Tucson also looked like they were playing a little scared after the first goal. Like they really didn't want to concede, and they and so it allowed for a lot more, particularly for the third goal. It allowed for a lot more possession by Tormenta, and they were able to move the ball around better. And I don't know if it was just, hey, we're losing, and we need to get the ball back, but they just didn't look as cohesive as they did in the first half. I thought Tucson had a pretty good first half, and even before the second goal by Morel's goal, I thought that they might even had another one earlier in the half. Other than that, I mean, it was a good game though by Tormenta for sure. So I was very impressed with how well they moved the ball and how they didn't give up either, especially after the first goal.
Yeah, and I think they did a lot against Tucson, that a lot of the same things they did against Greenville, which is bogging down that midfield, taking the ball away, especially in the second half. I think it was some combo of Tucson playing a little scared, but also Tormenta just really trying to regain possession there in the midfield.
Yeah, they don't allow anyone in their box. It's absolutely incredible how little time you get once you're in that box. I went back and tried to look to see the longest someone has spent in their box, and it was in the Greenville game. Somebody was in there for a good 6 seconds, and that was it. And if you don't score within 6 seconds in your final third in their box, you're not going to score against them. Simple as that.
When they did a better job, it didn't end up doing too much, but you notice on the heat map between their first game against Greenville and this game against Tucson, they were able to get into Tucson's box a lot more effectively. I will say on the first two goals that Antley assisted on, Tucson did nothing to shut him down. On the first goal, you can't let a guy go through the box like that untouched and not do anything and give him that easy of a pass. And then on the second goal, it looked like I believe it was he got a ball from the keeper, and Tucson looked like they were trying to press, and he just got out of that press way too easy to kick that through ball onto, what was it for a second? Oh, Morel. And so Tucson just, if they're going to press, if they're going to pressure, they need to ensure and pressing, right?
Yeah, but props to Connor too, because even on that third goal, right, he was the one who slid and intercepted the pass defensively and then immediately got back up and looked forward, right? And all those assists, of one thing that you see is him, he's pushing it. He's like, okay, I've got the ball. I'm not looking back at my keeper to restart and, have the defense spread out or have the offense kind of reorganize. No, I'm looking up, seeing who's going to hit that run. I know I've got Alex Morel. I know I've got Micheletto. I know I got Coutinho. I know I got guys making that run down the side. Where are they? And he's hitting them. And that was a difference, right? That's something to where, like you said, when Tucson went up a goal, it looked like they kind of parked the bus. So you don't want to give that other team time to really get organized and get their defenders back and get in position. So if you're looking up and get the ball and you immediately push it, that's the result you get. Player of the week, hands down.
Easiest decision. All right, any other thoughts on the game, guys, or who can?
I just want to know, how does Jason not know the score of the game since he's on social media so much?
So what I purposely did is I only went on Twitter in my mentions. So on the app, you can you hit home, list, whatever. I kept it on mentions. So unless somebody went into my mentions and said, hey, Jason, everything you said was right and Tormenta won 3-1. Thankfully, nobody did, because nobody wanted to give me credit, or because there's wonderful people out there, probably the no one wanted to give me credit part. But yes, no one spoiled it for me.
And that's League One fun, Jason. Social media,
the most humble of the host.
All right, our next game happened Friday night. The battle of the two teams: Toronto FC 2-2, Orlando City B 0. We had another red card for OCB. This time, Emmanuel Hagan in the 46th, And then Toronto got their goals through Luka Petrasso in the 48th and Jordan Peruzza in the 86th. A lot of people have asked who's going to watch this game, and I know you watched this game.
Yeah, so I did watch it, and the fact is OCB came out and they were being very aggressive very early. The first yellow card was in the 5th minute, so it's not like it was actually a boring game, but it also was not a pretty game at all. You could almost tell it was almost two good academy sides battling it out. There were some things to take away from this though, and one is when you watch the first half, there were some really weird things that happened in the 36th minute. I don't remember who it was, but there was a free kick, and the OCB player started and stopped running like 4 times. They hadn't practiced free kicks, which was really weird. I think he was trying to get the back line maybe to drop off and maybe leave some gaps for the attackers to jump into, but it didn't work at all and looked really, really strange. The TFC definitely felt more dangerous in the first half. They had better chances, and OCB had a few looks, but they were more like half chances than the big things. And then after the red card, which was a red card, then it just opened up, and TFC couldn't be stopped after that, basically. So I didn't know if Chris or Jason, if you guys had any.
You can't make that decision. That second yellow in the 47th minute, you got to understand you're on a yellow, and you can't. There was no point of it, right? You weren't going to win the ball. You knew the tackle was late. Just depend on your goalkeeper and defense, and don't make your team for the second week in a row have to play a man down for a whole half. I thought Orlando again was good on the ball from the time that they did have it. They do have very exciting players, but as far as Ira, what you were saying about set pieces, there's no way that they've ever practiced a set piece a day in their life. And if you want to look at that Toronto that first goal, that's all you need to know, because that man was more open than a 7-Eleven. He was just wide open 24/7. Nobody was around. I've never seen anyone make a 20-yard sprint towards the back post and have nobody even look in his direction. So that also has to do with being a man down, right? You're trying to organize and get people together, but it wasn't working. A player that did stand out to me for Toronto, because Toronto, not really defensively that great. They only won 64% of their tackles, and Dante Campbell won 36% of his team's total tackles, which is insane to me. I don't know how one player can win more than a third of your tackles, but here we are. But a player that I really liked for Toronto was Tariq Muhammad, who did everything, had 3 clearances, 2 interceptions, really overlapped well, put in 4 crosses, and with those crosses created 2 great chances, and then had the assist for the corner. So I think that he played a very outstanding game, both defensively and offensively. And hopefully he's someone that can kind of spark that Toronto offense, because in the midfield, they were kind of flat, and you would expect it like Endo or somebody to have stepped up, but no one really stepped up in that midfield.
Yeah, there was. So for TFC, there was Nelson came on, and he was coming off on the right side, and he was very dribbly, but he kept on dribbling a lot of times, like right into defenders instead of laying it off. So I don't know if he was, told to Klinsmann, like, go out there and try stuff and be dribbly. But he's obviously good on the ball, but he missed some obvious chances, and he should have scored too as well. Like there was one time when he actually beat 2 defenders, and Peruzza was right there and could have and should have scored. Peruzza himself tried just a second or two later had that chip over the keeper. But that was, so he kind of redeemed himself by scoring there. And then Nelson also should have scored again in the 88th minute. I don't know if you saw that at the very end. It was like OCB was just giving up at the very end, and he dribbled around 2 defenders again. And I don't know how he didn't score right there. But, so I think TFC could be more dangerous than we think. I mean, this was our first look at them. I think that they were pretty disciplined. The fact that OCB didn't have good chances in the first half were, I think, pretty telling.
Before Chris says his slick comment, I do want to say that Schaffelberg, if he could control himself better, is going to be a fun player to watch. He's like a bulldozer, and I think he was involved in like 17 duels, just everywhere on the field. Didn't even win half of them, but that doesn't matter. He went in full-fledged, full proud, and I'm proud of it for him, right? Going 100%, going hard. Just next time, try to win some of them and not just run people over. Okay, Chris, ready for your comment.
So I think if it's a Friday night game, I'm hoping in the future all the Friday night games are must-watch TV. But if you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, husband, or wife, I hope you took them out for a nice dinner on Friday night, because this game was not worth your time. The only thing that Toronto FC is going to be a threat to this year is OCB's hopes of not finishing dead last in the league. This game was terrible. It was the worst thing to watch. And me and the 244 people that were reportedly there at the stadium all regretted it. I mean, I think we got to talk about the 244. Like that, to me, for this league, I get it. It's your two teams that are focused on youth development, maybe even more than winning or putting a good product on the field. We all know that teams are going to inflate the numbers for attendance based on ticket sales, and it doesn't necessarily mean people that actually show up. But 244, I think that's honestly, I think that's a bad look for the league. It's really not great. You're talking about Richmonds and Greenvilles and Tormentas, these teams that are packing out the stadiums, and 244. I mean,
that's been a problem for USL in general. I mean, has been a big complaint for a lot of the two sides, and one of the reasons why like Seattle moves, right? Like the Red Bulls move their team out of Red Bull Arena into their own stadium, so they actually get they do get a little bit more attendance, but it certainly is a big problem with the two sides. And I don't disagree. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. And how do you get those butts and seats to give a real atmosphere of a stadium and playing in front of big crowds? I mean, high school games around here get more people in attendance.
Yeah, and we won't go too much into it. That's a whole nother discussion. But I do think that a rebranding and literally not calling yourselves B or 2 just does so much more, right? It's so much more opportunity, even for players who are hoping to try out and get into that system. If you hear 2 or B, you don't want to watch. You don't even want to be a part of it, because you're like, oh, okay, that's a whole Orlando's academy system. You have to, it's not like a team that I can go, yeah, it's not something to really get behind. You're like, oh, I'm watching the kids, or the player's not good enough for the first team. And that's just a horrible look. So I think rebranding helps. But also, too, what has Orlando done from a marketing perspective? We talked about it all preseason, that Orlando hasn't done anything for social media. They're not giving the players any personality. So I don't even think they care, which is the problem, right? Like, you can have 300 people at a game, but if your organization's okay with that, that's the bigger problem.
Yeah, and I get the idea. I get the idea of the B teams and the 2 teams being able to train together, but to me, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to play your games in the same city. Like, take Orlando 30 minutes, an hour down the road, rebrand them in a city that desperately would love to have some pro soccer there. Yeah, they can still train during the week and live with the first team, and you can send first team guys down there to play if you need to, but put it in a city where people are going to care and want to come out. I mean, to me, that's the most frustrating thing about that match.
Well, I think one of the problems is OCB did that, because they play like half hour, 45 minutes away from where Orlando City plays. They play at the Montverde Academy. And so that just shows you, even if you move away, like, you still got to think they could probably pick a better location instead of where their academy is, because who wants to?
But it's called the academy. Like, you just brand it differently. Make it seem like you're not watching a bunch of like students and a bunch of academy kids playing, right? Brand this as like, this is the future of professional. Like, these are players who you're going to see in MLS. Orlando has great branding. Like, I'm sure they can have somebody hook it up. It's just calling yourself B. They're not doing any marketing. It's lazy. It's just everything that's going on is lazy.
On that happy note, going into the Saturday slate of games, we have Richmond Kickers 0, South Georgia Tormenta 0. This was Tormenta's third game in 8 days. There was a little bit of rotation from what I saw. Any thoughts on this game, guys?
I thought Richmond looked better. I thought they possessed the ball very well. You started to really see what they wanted to do. I thought Charles Boateng was great. He looks like he's that missing piece that the offense needs to produce. There was times to where he was just off, and I think the timing's going to be right. There was one play where Daniel Jackson was pretty much calling him like collect long distance roaming charges any way he could to get the ball on a run, and Boateng didn't see it. But I think Boateng was great, and even though he didn't create too many chances, he caused Tormenta a lot of problems, and he was the most fouled person in the game because of it. They weren't able to really keep up and needed to slow him down. And so that's something to really look for as Richmond's season goes along. They possess for 58% of the game, which is what I think they wanted to do, and I think that's what they're going to try to do and play out that back. And I thought Eli Lockaby was great defensively. 3 tackles, 2 clearances, 2 interceptions. Was vital on stopping Tormenta's counterattacks. I thought that every time Tormenta won the ball, and like they do running down the sides, Eli did a great job at just having a body there or tracking back and interrupting it. So I like what I saw from Richmond. They're just their number one thing is they gotta finish, right?
Yeah,
like it looked like they did everything right except for final third stuff.
Yeah, there were 2 chances in the first half in particular that should have been goals in the 14th minute and the 32nd minute. And the 32nd minute goal shot in particular, Daniel Jackson should have just buried it. It was a great look on goal, and it just wasn't on frame. And the difference in this game in a way was, I think, that the fact that Richmond only had 1 shot on goal. They had a lot of shots. They outshot Tormenta, but they only had 1 shot actually on frame, and I think that was the problem. So so if you're doing all the right things, you just need to click that last thing. And we know Daniel Jackson, we know, can score. We've seen him score before, but it just needs to be a lot more clinical. So that's it. Also on the other side, I'd say for Tormenta, I like their center back Phelps quite a lot. I mean, he was one of the reasons why it was so difficult for quality chances to come from Richmond. Richmond would get all the way up to the 18, and then basically either lose the ball or be around the back.
Yeah, and I think also go ahead, Chris.
I think the thing for me is I don't know what to make of this matchup, because I think, yes, Richmond looked better than they did in the first game, but at the same time, this was Tormenta's 3rd game in 8 days, so I don't know how much of it was Richmond actually was looking better, or Tormenta was just tired and worn down and rotating players, because Tormenta's looked really, really, really good in their first 2 games. So when it's a 0-0 draw and those are the circumstances, it's hard to really take a lot and put a lot of weight behind anything from the match. But I think all the points we've made are true and good. It's just hard to know how much weight to give them.
Yeah, and I do think that as Tormenta, like you were saying, rotating players and playing their 3rd game in 8 days, right? I think they're happy with this draw. They said, like, look, we know we're a great defensive team. And I think that's also where we have to give them credit. So Richmond had 2 great chances in the first half, but they didn't really have too many great chances after that, right? They put a lot of shots into anywhere within the vicinity, but they were from outside of the box. They were from corner kicks that were contested. They weren't really great chances, and that's what Tormenta does well, right? They take out that whole box so that you don't get clean shots at goal. You don't get good chances, and so that's what they did a great job with. But the one thing I will say about Richmond is I really think they stepped up their defense. Even Akwe, right? He came in, had 4 interceptions. And that's where I think the Richmond from week 1 would have probably gave up a goal or 2 to Tormenta on those counterattacks. So I do think that Richmond's defense got better, but right now they have a lot of questions on that final third because they A, need to get better chances, and they B, need somebody that they know can confidently finish.
But if you haven't watched the game, it really, even though it was 0-0, I think it deserved a goal or 2. And the fact that it wasn't doesn't this wasn't one of those really boring 0-0 draws that you get. There was a lot more to unpack within it.
Yeah. Anytime Connor Antley's on the field is not boring. That man was everywhere doing it.
I'm learning that each and every week now. All right, moving on. Chattanooga in their first home game in their existence, the Red Wolves 1, Ford Madison 0. The goal came from Iman Zaid in the 67th minute for Chattanooga. Jason, you were there.
Yeah, had a great time in Chattanooga. First thing that I saw and did when I got there was hold a snake, so that was fun. Got some Chick-fil-A, which is always great, and then finally went and watched the game. And I think that Ford, for their first game, they came out with a plan and they executed it well. Right, they held possession. There was a couple of late scratches injury wise, so they had to rotate. Giro, the preseason debutant, came out and played extremely well that first half. And Chattanooga gave him a lot of space and he was taking it. He was like, oh, okay, cool. You're going to give me 10 yards to run up and strike this. That's exactly what I'm going to do. JC Banks in the midfield. I didn't know how I felt about that. And then I watched it and was like, oh, okay, now I feel absolutely wonderful about this. He destroyed Chattanooga Red Wolves. Obviously looked like they wanted to come out there and said, cool, we're just going to counter for not getting possession. And every counter that they had in that first half, JC Banks was like, cool, this is my ball now. I'm taking this, and stopped everything. Josiel Nunez, too, great job on both sides of the ball. He had a great through ball to Toye in the first half, which Toye almost put away after, Angles had an outstanding save. But I think he also did a great job defensively, too. He was tireless. He kept running back. He kept, stopping counterattacks. Same with Jeff Machad. He had 3 or 4 great interceptions. But the biggest standout for Ford for me was their center back duo. Ormsberg and Tobin just killed it. They had 18 clearances together. Anytime Chattanooga put that ball within 20 yards of the box, they were clearing it. They were running down the strikers. They were not making anything easy for Chattanooga that first half. So that first half was all Ford, right? And then it started the same way in the second half, but then you saw Chattanooga started getting a little more possession, started getting comfortable. They started getting more chances, but it didn't really lead to anything. And I thought because it wasn't quick enough, I thought that when Chattanooga found success, it was because they sent in early crosses. It wasn't the crosses where you take the 2 extra dribbles to get to the side corner and then send it in. It was sending it in from as soon as you get maybe 10 yards past midfield, sending that early cross to kind of throw the defense off. But the difference maker was Mari comes in, and Mare changed it, because what happened was Chattanooga did the exact same thing they did all game, but Mare was bringing the ball down at midfield, his back to goal, and he was gathering 3 or 4 defenders, pulling in, and that's all he needed to do to then dip the ball off to Beatty or whoever was around him, who sent it to Zaid for a one-on-one. And if you give Zaid a one-on-one chance, at least 3 chances he's going to bag one of them, and that's exactly what happened. He had 2 great chances. He didn't score the easier one that hit the side netting, but had to show off and hit the 20-yarder off the bounce. Beautiful goal. One of contender for a goal of the week. And that was a difference, right? I don't think that Chattanooga necessarily changed the way they played at all this game. I thought that they came out, they said, look, we're gonna do counter, and then Mare was the difference. And then also they played hungry like the wolf when they scored the goal and before and after the game, which I was a fan of. I thought that was a good little pinch, good little taste at the end.
They announced 4,000 fans. I think for me, at least on the Red Wolves side, it was their center defensive midfielder. I'm gonna butcher his name, but is it Ualfi? Is that how you pronounce his last name? He was incredible. Again, on both sides of the ball. I mean, he was the pivot. He was very dangerous, breaking up plays because Forward did have a lot of possession, and he was able to make sure that they weren't able to come down the middle very much. Also, in the first half, Red Wolves had a few good chances in the first half, but like Jason said, their back line was very disciplined for Forward, and it was like waves breaking sometimes right at the 18. Right, that was like the Red Wolves could get to the 18 but couldn't get beyond that. But what was different, I think, defensively this time compared to the North Texas game is Chattanooga seemed to cover much better. So whereas, you always had two players, ready to cover for one another, whereas in the North Texas game, on at least two of the goals, you basically didn't have the rotation and people covering. So I think the Red Wolves, the reason why they won this game was not so much on the offensive side, generating the offense, because they scored on their only shot on goal, but they really did, back up the defense a little bit. And I talked to Coach Hankinson on Monday, and he even said that too. He's like, look, we have a game plan, but its individual execution has to be better. And that's really what happened. Was they had much better individual execution, I think, on the day than they had the week before at North Texas. And shout for BGN Written, by the way, BGNFN. .fn for actually a deep dive that I do in the Red Wolves tactics after my interview with the coach.
And that's dropping tomorrow, right, Ira?
It'll be out on Thursday, right?
Yeah, plug. And I also do think that what Chattanooga did differently this week than they did the first week was their recovery was a lot better. So there's one great example to where Paulo Jr. gets a great through ball, and he looks like he's one-on-one with the keeper. And then I think it's Andrew Malin comes back and has a great tackle and blocks the shot. And I don't think you saw any of that against North Texas, right? It was like as soon as a North Texas player got by them, that was it. So I think hopefully that North Texas game, lit a fire under them defensively, and it showed. And I think that they had, like Ira said, I think defense for them won this game, not necessarily the offense.
All right. Any Chris, you got any thoughts on the game?
Listen, this game was at the same time as the Greenville game. I was out there. I tried to watch a little bit of it this week, but just, timing wise, I've only seen the highlights. I will say though that, this is Forward Madison. This is your first game of the season. The Red Wolves is your first home game. There's, we've talked to death about the situation in Chattanooga. There's a match across town that somebody on this panel might have gone to a tailgate a little bit to maybe just mingle with the people. So I think you had to be impressive and had to there was pressure on both teams. So I think good to Chattanooga for winning, good to having a good crowd of not 4,000 people. Thank you very much. 3,500, not letting you rain on my Greenville Parade, biggest crowd in USL League One this week. So Ira, you can't steal my joy.
And shout out to the Flock, Labara, all the Forward Madison supporters who made that trip. You got to be insane to love your team that much to drive 12, 14 hours, and 30 of them showed up, tailgated with them, great group, weren't allowed to bring their drum in, and so they made best and used a trash can and banged on it like Doug Funny. And yeah, it was an absolute amazing atmosphere from both the away and the home team. I had fun, right? Like, we can get into the politics of everything, but at the end of the day, it's all about fans coming out and having a fun experience, right? I don't care about the politics of the game. I come out, I want to support local soccer, and I come out to look at the atmosphere, and I'm like, cool, is this something that I would want to go to? And yes, like, tailgate was fun. The game was fun. Chattanooga was just overall fun. Gained about 3 pounds eating things I know business eating. Shout out to Champs Chicken. Or Champy's Chicken. But yeah, I think it was fun. And don't come in my mentions anymore about attendance counting. Please put that much effort in supporting your team as you do in sitting there single-handedly counting people. That is so annoying. I'm trying so hard not to go on a rant, but it's just, please, people, like, if you can't support your team with that much energy, then don't even bother. You look whack. You look stupid.
Couldn't agree more. The last game of the weekend, and probably, I don't know about you guys, the most exciting game of the weekend, from a neutral standpoint, but Greenville triumphed 2, Lansing Ignite 1. We had a goal from Ricky Lopez Espin in the 27th minute for Lansing, and Jake Keegan in the second half in the 53rd minute equalized Greenville. But then you just red card score. You had a red card in the 58th from Ricardo Perez of Lansing, another red card in the 62nd from Robinson Mashabani of Lansing, and then Cole Seller just decided to get in on it in the 77th to make the game 10 versus 9 before Kevin Politz, by way of Grant Stoneman in the 85th, won it for Greenbelt. Chris, I'm going to start with you. What happened?
Here we go.
So here's the thing. I think, in the atmosphere, and it was an incredible atmosphere. I know Stephen Short was there and Jake Edwards were there. Shout out to two USL bigwigs. But it really was incredible. It even blew my expectations out of the water in terms of the crowd and the energy in the stadium. And I think some of that trickled down to the officiating. I think from watching the game live, it felt like, man, this official has let things get out of control. But when I went back and watched it, it doesn't feel, none of the fouls, none of the cards given felt unfair or unwarranted. But one of the things I think I noticed at the game and even back on the rewatch was there were several times where it felt like she kind of wasn't going to give a card and then maybe stepped away and kind of waited to see how the crowd and the players reacted. And particularly for Lansing, I felt like they had a lot of Neymars on their team, a lot of guys who were just way over embellishing fouls. And I think that played to their advantage a little bit. I even think the red card on Cole Seiler, she seemed to was going to let it go, and he just kept talking and talking and talking, and then she pulled him aside and gave him a second yellow. So I think some of it felt like just the game getting out of control a little bit. She was trying to do her best to keep it under control, but nothing felt unwarranted. But yeah, it was a great atmosphere, a big win for Greenville. I know the Moshe Bani red card was the one that was really crazy because I was sitting at midfield kind of right behind the two benches, and Nate Miller was incensed about it. He felt like he did not realize Moshe Bani had gotten the first red card for dissent on the red card previous. So he kept yelling at Moshe Bani to go back on the field. He was like, "You do not have two yellows. You do not have two yellows." So I think, again, I think communication, I think trying to keep the game under wraps, it probably was a little excessive with the cards. Just like I said, I don't think any of the cards were undeserved, but I think it probably just got more raucous than it needed to be.
Should I go and play devil's advocate just to make you just some good old fashioned ribbing? I think there should have been more cards, to be honest with you. I'm not going to put it on the ref. I think that the players, and that was my key point in my breakdown this week of the recap. Mentally, players this week just confused me. When you look at some of the plays they made, knowing that they're sitting on a yellow, when knowing that the ball is at someone's head and I'm gonna go for it anyway at my foot. I didn't understand what they were doing. And I do agree with Chris. I do think the game got out of hand, and the game got out of hand in the first 5 minutes when Klaus had two really bad fouls and didn't get any kind of a yellow card for them. And that was the difference. You saw Lansing start playing more physical after that. And I think the Moshe Bani one hurt them the most because in the first half, he was so dangerous in space. And that's the thing that you saw against Richmond too. You can't give him any space because he knows exactly how to cut in and he knows how to corner it. And when you look at that goal that Lansing scored in the first half, Lansing, every goal they've scored pretty much outside of their set piece has been in 3 or 4 passes, nothing more than 4 passes. They get the ball, they bring in the press, they send it long to the winger. The winger then either cuts it into the middle and it's a give and go, or it's a back pass. But with this one, Steve St. Duke on the other side of Moshe Bani, they're both wide on the field, does a great job. He's got Tyler Pollock, and he hits the middle, just sprints towards the middle as opposed to staying wide. And what that does is it brings Tyler Pollock in, and now Espin starts sneaking back post, and Pollock has to make a decision. Okay, am I following the guy that's going back post, or do I need to follow the fastest guy on the field right now? He obviously leans towards the fastest guy on the field, and then they see Espin wide open, and he gets the goal. So props to Steve St. Duke for making that decision. But yeah, those are the kind of goals that Lansing needs, and you can't do that when there's 9 players on the field. And I think that they were just all dumb fouls. And that game could have been 10-1 if it wasn't for Lansing goalkeeper. Kurt played out of his mind, had the save of the week, was absolutely amazing. Koifik had, again, a great game, saved a clearance, saved one off the line, I think in the 45th minute, right before the second half, which was big for them. And yeah, I think that Moshe Bani's red card was a difference maker. And also, and Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but having Bermudez start on the left side was the most confusing thing to me.
So
and
bad.
I did not get it. And as soon as this man went to the right side in the second half, magic happened. Magic happened. He did what he needed to do. There was a great chance that he put in the crosses in the 52nd minute, and that was the kind of chances you didn't see in the first half for Greenville. And so I think that was a difference maker. And then also the one thing I will say, even though I think the ref, I agreed with all of her cards, the one thing I understand is legal. That was the quickest retake that I've seen.
So brilliant.
But if she doesn't call for you to stop, the game and give her time to write down or reposition, you can take it. So I don't have any beef with it, right? It's a legal goal, but it's just like, wow, that was super quick. And also, that was a great finish from Keegan. Keegan had a great finish.
It was a great finish, but the restart there was great. Those quick restarts, I think they make the game flow, but it's also, they only work when that you have the defense on the back. And it's funny, Jason, you literally hit on almost all my points. I do want to highlight, though, is it Moshe Bane? His one-on-one ability was phenomenal. So I agree that, like, when he was taken out, Lansing's attack certainly broke down quite a lot. But Greenville, I think, even without the two cards, I still think Greenville probably deserved to win this game. They had far more possession. Granted, they even before the second red card, they had outshot Lansing 2-1. So I think it was probably the right result, regardless of how messy it got with all the cards and everything. And the fact that they scored Kevin Pollitt's with the winning goal instead of an own goal, home field advantage maybe. That's the who's keeping score that night matters too.
So I'll say this because this is where I agree with you, Jason, on the should have been red cards. I think, and we actually see that the league has retroactively given a red card for Edmundo Robinson in the 7th minute, where he literally kicked a guy in the chest.
Yeah,
it looked really bad.
It was the Sparta 300 kick. It was straight kicked
really,
him in the chest.
It really, really was. And I'll tell you, it really worries me that now a team that has only been fielding 6 subs per game is now going to be down 2 more people this week. So we're going to have Greenville's only going to have 4 subs available for the match against Chattanooga this Saturday. I will tell you this. I know Bermudez starting on the left perplexed me, but what I did like was the shift from the 3-5-2 to the 4-3-3 with Keegan up top. That is something that I have been harping on since the preseason with Keegan's finishing ability. I think you saw way more good chances at goal with that setup. I asked Coach Harks about it after the game, if that was something Lansing specific or something he noticed after the first game. He said it was a little bit of both. You saw Cameron Saul start on the bench this week. Edmundo came in as a starter, and I think that's why they pushed Bermudez over to the left. But again, once they flipped them, it opened it wide open from that point. So the other thing I wanted to say about the experience in Greenville, I know a lot of folks had complained about the camera work on the broadcast, which I noticed. I obviously didn't notice when I was there at the game, but noticed on the rewatch. But even live in person, Stephen Short made a big deal about Greenville being the first team in the league with LED boards, but they put LED boards on the camera side of the field, so you don't see them on TV, but the majority of the stands are looking at them. And once it got dark, if the board lit up white or a light color, a blue or something like that, the shadow, the ball and the players just completely disappeared, and it was almost near impossible to see them.
That's probably because of the angle you were at, because you were probably pretty low compared to larger stadium that where you tend to sit a little bit higher.
Chris is in the boxes with the owners. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
he was watching from that sweet green car they got down there.
I'm on the front row, right in shouting distance of the away coach. So got to get my shots in.
I'd like to comment a little bit about the production too, because unlike the camera work wasn't great. There was weird. There were two cameras that had different color. They weren't color balanced correctly. But the one thing I did like about this game was that there was a color commentator. In most of the other games, it was only a single commentator doing the call. In this match, there was a color person who was able to give a little bit more information about what was going on in the match, and I did like that. I do like the two man system as opposed to a single person making the call. So hopefully that's something that shows up in more games throughout the season.
I also love that the broadcast team totally shouted me out with the podcast breakdown of Chris Bermudez's play in the first week. I was pretty hyped when I turned on the broadcast. They were saying he was really getting a lot of hype in the podcast scene. I said, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad that $10 that you slipped and paid off, Chris. Obviously, the 20 would have been the one that gets you the name, but we got a budget.
He's got to build on that each week.
But before we go on to the upcoming games, I do want to say, unfortunate event that happened at that game. With homophobic slur or just a slur, any kind of a word that should never be used. But I do give props to the league, to Lansing, to their supporters group for quickly investigating it and having action. By Monday, the team had issued a response. The supporter group issued a statement, and even Espen himself said he accepted his ban, took fault for it, and said that he was going to learn from it and build it. And now the supporters group is also doing a I think it's for the next for the next game and the game against Michigan State, to where if they score a goal, they're going to donate money for each goal scored. So props to the league, props to Lansing for really taking an unfortunate situation, but not, prolonging it, not ignoring it, quickly, promptly getting to the roots of it, investigating it, and dealing with it appropriately. That's something that I'm glad to see with this league.
And I think the biggest part of that is that Ricky himself, immediately just said, yep, I did it. I shouldn't have, and I've learned from it. And so I think really props to him. I mean, obviously you don't want him to have to make that mistake, but the fact that he didn't try to push back and say, no, I didn't do it, I didn't say it, that's really great on him to have at least come forward and said, yeah, I'm going to take it and take my lumps and take my punishment as I need to.
And even the supporters group too, they were the first ones to say something, which I loved, because you see a lot of supporters group, they go so hard for their team. They're not willing to accept mistakes that might have been made, or they want to prolong it. They were saying immediately right after, nope, we're investigating it too. We understand what's going on. We understand it's wrong. And, I got to give a props to Assembly Line for that, because it was great to see that. This is a league driven by the community. So the fact that the community is the first one to push this, acknowledge it, that really meant a lot.
And this should be a lesson to everyone, right? This is, I think from, like you've both said, from the league to the supporters to the teams, this is the way to handle a situation like this. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation that shouldn't happen in the first place, but if it does, this is it. You do it this way, and, every other, props to USL and the teams and the supporters groups for the way that this has been handled.
Couldn't agree more. So looking forward to this upcoming week, we have a full slate of games this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Starting us off, we have Chattanooga at Greenville, and actually in week 3 of the season, we have our first rematch. This time, Richmond is traveling to Lansing for their home opener. You have Fort Madison going down to North Texas. You have Toronto 2 going down to FC Tucson for their home opener, which I'm going to be traveling down for and I'm excited for. And then you have Tormenta FC playing OCB. I know, guys, we had picked a couple of those games to talk about, to predict. So, Chris, you first. The first game we decided to talk about is Chattanooga and Greenville.
Yeah, I've got that as a draw. I think, Greenville has looked good at home. They're defensively, they play so strong defensively, and I know it's going to be a weird match to watch. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 0-0 draw, just because of the way Chattanooga plays too, kind of sitting back and waiting for the counter. Now Greenville this week pressed really high, and they are very susceptible to counters. Both goals they've given up this season have been on counters, so I wouldn't be surprised for Chattanooga to actually walk away with the win, but I do think Greenville has the firepower to score. I am concerned about only having basically 16 available players for the match. Obviously that's more than you need, but and Cole Seiler is going to be a huge loss for them on the back line. Like, that to me is the biggest thing. Edmundo Robinson didn't start in the first game, so I don't think that's as big of a loss, but Cole Seiler is going to be a critical missing piece for Greenville on Saturday.
And I actually think you're going to see the opposite. I actually think Greenville might be a little hesitant because of that loss. Not having Cole and, bringing in someone new for the back line, they're going to go, okay, they need more support than what we normally. So I wouldn't expect them to do that press that they did against Lansing. I actually think Chattanooga might have more possession, which is why I think that this game probably will be a draw. And I'm saying that because I do think this is going to be the Cameron Saul game. I do think now, because that Greenville is going to be more on the defensive side and won't be pressing so high, this is the perfect opportunity for him to intercept some balls in the middle and really start those counterattacks. And I think that this is probably going to be a 1-1 game. And I do think that the goal that Greenville is going to score will be on a counterattack.
I think it's going to be a 1-0 affair to Chattanooga, primarily because of all the changes that Greenville is going to have to make, and there is a chemistry factor. Chattanooga, will have the full week. Everything, I think, started to click for them last week. So I don't think that I think it's unlikely that it's a multiple goal game, but it would not surprise me at all if it was 0-0 or 1-1. But I do give the edge to Chattanooga. I think if they can keep their back line as solid as it was last week, then it'll be hard for Greenville to break them down.
And I actually had the opposite result of you, Ira. I think Greenville, 1-0-1 win will take it. I was really impressed with Keegan this past weekend, and despite that short bench, I think they can grind out a result at home. And then the next game we want to talk about is Forward Madison traveling down to North Texas. What are your thoughts on this one, guys?
So yeah, this is the probably the most intriguing one, right? You had the kids come out the first week and put the spanking on a veteran team. You got a 16-year-old scoring hat tricks, but I do think the difference is Ford is a more possession team. So what is North Texas going to do when the team is not giving them the ball or is handling the press better, right? And I think that's where Ford has the advantage of kind of exploiting that backfield when they're pressing so high. And I think that's where you're going to see Paulo Jr. and Toye really run havoc on them, right? You have experienced guys. Toye's an MLS guy. Paulo Jr. has been doing it for over a decade. They know where they need to be. They know where defenses are susceptible. I think that that's going to be the key. And I think that because Ford is such a possession team, they're going to tire out the kids. They're going to have them running all over. And I could see Ford winning that 1-0, maybe even 2-0.
I'm going to take the opposite. And I think it's going to be 4-4 with Paulo Jr. and Pepe both getting hat tricks.
Wow.
Yo.
Doubling down on the MVP pick, huh? I like it.
Goodness.
Ooh, now getting going at that pace.
Yeah.
I have North Texas winning as well. Not as well, but not goals. I think even though they may have to sit back a little, I think you still gotta be worried about their ability to counterattack. And even if Pepe is off a step from his time with the U17s, I think he does score another goal, and so I think 2-0 North Texas with Pepe with a goal, the game winner at least. Kristen.
Yeah, I have said even since the preseason that Forward Madison, I was worried about a team called Forward without any offensive firepower. They have since resolved some of that with some loanees from Minnesota United, but I'm still in wait and see mode with them. And so I really think I think North Texas has proven that they've got the offensive firepower. I think Madison is going to get them clogged up there in the middle, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a 1-0, 2-0 victory for North Texas here.
All right, and we'll be keeping track of our picks throughout the year. We'll probably pick a couple games from each pick.
Just to make fun of Ira at the end of the season. I'm sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
Right.
And
Moshe Perez.
and what we'll do for the listeners on Fridays, we'll put up a poll and we can have you guys vote for who you think will win or if they're going to draw. And at the end of the year, whoever wins, maybe for our championship podcast, we have to get the loser to wear something that they probably wouldn't wear. It'd be a real shame if Chris had to wear some kind of Tormenta jersey, while watching Greenville. Be real shame.
That would be unfortunate. And then, guys, just as we wind down, we have a couple fan questions. Steven Hernandez sent this one in. Who will end the season with more red cards, Orlando or Lansing?
Is Gucci paying the fines for the Orlando kids? Because I'm sure that part-time job money is not going to be enough for them to pay for those fines. But yeah, that's my answer. There's no way that anyone's getting more cards than Orlando.
Not with Gucci at the helm.
Red Cardos FC, and then
there you go. That's the rebrand. We've already fixed it.
We can drop the logo real quick. Another question: who didn't make the team of the week that should have? Jason, I know you had a pretty strong opinion about this one.
Yeah, it's Kirk, and
100%. I'm with you on that.
I know it's tough for the league to put a goalkeeper of the team who did not win on team of the week. I don't care. He had twice as many saves as the goalkeeper they did pick. He had the save of the week to where he had a similar save to Hara from week 1, but this time watched his eyes and he knew 100% what he was doing with that kick save. Was the reason why Lansing even stayed in the game up until the last 10 minutes. Hands down, should be on team of the week. I'll fight anybody who tells me differently.
That game would have been 5 or 6 to 1 if it wasn't for Kirk, which is incredible. With he's so undersized as a goalkeeper. Like even when I was standing behind the Lansing goal for the entire first half. That dude is tiny. He is not that big as a goalkeeper, and it's incredible what he was able to do.
He's controlling the air, right? Like every cross that Greenville sent in the first half, he was like, "Yeah, this is easily me." Just dominated.
I'm gonna take one other. I agree that Kirk, should be probably on there too. But also, and I mentioned him when we were talking about the game. But Ualfi from Chattanooga, just his defensive work I think was underappreciated in that game, and I think he's one of the big reasons why Forward wasn't able to get more chances on goal and really good looks on goal. Who just that midfield destroyer that he didn't quite play in North Texas. I think because he didn't have the cover, but he had an outstanding game, and I think probably I was a little bit surprised when his name wasn't on the best 11.
Defensive midfielders always get overlooked for those team of the weeks.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it?
Yep.
And then our last question from Weston, and we touched on this earlier, but based on the Greenville Lansing game and the telecast, what did you guys think of it? How bad was it in retrospective? And is there a way it can get better?
Well, we've already kind of talked a little bit about the quality being poor. I can tell you with my interview I did with Stephen Short, he told me that basically the ESPN Plus deal, they have a centralized production company out of Florida that does all of the production for the entire league for USL Championship. So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, Greenville's people did bad or anything like that. It is the production company, and obviously whoever they sent this time wasn't as good, but they may send those people up to Madison in a week, and you might see the same thing with that. So I think it's really just going to be as that production company continues to ramp up, hey, what I would say is let them know when things aren't as acceptable, and I'm sure they will work to try and correct it and do the best they can.
Yeah, hopefully they have some quality control. I mean, one of the challenges I think that's going to happen with a lot of these with a lot of these matches is you can't get exactly the great camera angles even if you have 2 or 3 cameras around, just because the placement of the cameras might not be appropriate to be able to see the whole pitch. I mean, a football pitch is large, right? So you really need to be able to get that wide angle shot. Even when I was trying to watch watch some of the games. I wish I could have seen more of the field, because you can't see both touch lines at the same time, and that's a function a little bit more of the fact that where the stands are and where the camera is versus the field, and I don't know if they're going to be able to fix that until you get more soccer specific stadiums built, and which should clear that up, because you'll have better camera angles.
I can tell you specifically in Greenville, because I knew I think when I was watching the Tormenta Greenville game, it felt like the camera angle was really low. So I don't know what Jason, I know you were there. I don't know what their press box looked like in terms of where it was in height. Greenville's is very tall, but that side of the field, they've put basically 2 or 3 rows of like high end seats. And then the press box is right there. And the seats, there is the sideline, there's the LED boards, there's the seats, and then the press box is right behind those 2 rows of seats. And I know even Paul Klaus trying to take some throw-ins on that side, there is no room for him to do that running long throw he likes to do. He was very vocal about being frustrated by that. It's interesting to me that the team put the LED boards as close to the sideline as they did. But I think that's part of the problem in Greenville, is that the camera is literally probably no more than about 15 feet from the sideline.
And this is the first year. So it's first time ESPN Plus and these camera angles are getting used to these stadiums. And so I'm curious to see by week 6 where we're at. And if it hasn't improved by week 6, then obviously it's a problem. I would not be surprised if those LED lights get moved over to the other side, because I don't see why people would pay for those LED lights if they're not going to get advertised on television. So we'll see. But yeah, right now, new league, these are the kind of things that you have to overcome. I'm not going to panic yet, but like Chris said, reach out if you feel like it's unacceptable. You are paying for this. This is your team. This is something you're passionate about. Showcase that. And the league obviously will respect that and try to make the appropriate changes.
All right, and that will do it for us this week. I want to thank Beautiful Game Network for hosting us. Be sure to check out bgn.fm for just about every podcast for every USL team, as well as bgnnews.com. I know a couple of these guys write recaps and analysis for the written side. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and U.S. Soccer. Go Roughneck Scarves to get those scarves from those leagues, as well as custom scarves for your team or group. Before we sign off, guys, where can the people find you? Let's go Ira first.
At Ira Jersey on Twitter.
Jason.
At Home Sweet Soccer.
And Chris.
Go read my stuff over at gvlsoccer.com, and you can follow my podcast and writing account over at YTSS Podcast.
And I will say, Chris had a show with Stephen Short. He's mentioned a couple of times, the VP of League One. Make sure to check that out. It's got a great conversation with the VP about the league in the future. And
lots of expansion talk and Pro Rel and USL Cup. Good stuff in there.
There's a lot of good stuff. All right, guys, until next week, we'll see you later. Until next week, that was smooth.
Don't you dare lose that U.S. Open Cup game, Chattanooga. Don't you dare.